Welcome to Mr. Disturbing. Tonight, we're plunging into the dark heart of the Appalachians with some truly unsettling true horror stories. That'll keep you up all night. If you're brave enough, smash that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next descent into fear. I never planned on telling anyone this story, partly because I thought no one would believe it, and partly because a piece of me still wishes it wasn't true. Like maybe if I don't say it aloud, it won't solidify into something real, something that actually happened to me in the fall of 2014, deep in the southern ridges of the Appalachian Mountains, where the border of North Carolina meets Georgia in a strange patch of wilderness that locals sometimes call the Dark Hollow, a place that, curiously, doesn't appear on most modern maps, and yet seems to have existed longer than the forests around it, older than the soil itself, and although I've been an avid hiker all my life, someone who sought solitude over society and trusted maps more than memories, that place broke something in me, not just physically, but in the quiet places of the mind where you keep your sense of control, of understanding. And ever since then, I've never truly trusted the woods again. Because once you realize the forest can see you back, you never walk into it the same way again. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So let me tell you how it all started, which, like many bad ideas, began with curiosity and just enough pride to think I'd be the one who could make it through where others didn't, because the place had stories, plenty of them, some old, some recent, stories of campers who vanished without a trace, of hikers who came back wrong, quiet, glassy-eyed, never speaking about what they saw, and one case in particular stuck with me, a park ranger named Eli Graves who went missing in 1998, reportedly on a solo patrol through an unmarked stretch of forest, and was found 3 weeks later walking along the side of a highway, barefoot, dehydrated, and nearly feral. But the strange thing wasn't just that he'd survived, it was that he refused to speak a single word about where he'd been, not even to his wife, and quit his job the very next day, moved states, changed his name, and was never heard from again. And it was that mystery, that stubborn silence, that drew me in the most, because I believed, stupidly, that truth was something waiting to be uncovered like a buried stone. And so I packed light, brought my dog Fletcher, and set out into the dense trail systems with a printed map I'd stitched together from ranger archives and old survey documents. And for the first 2 days, everything felt familiar, safe even. A quiet rhythm of campfires, dried rations, and the crunch of leaves underfoot. But by the 3rd day, I started noticing changes, not just in the landscape, but in the feeling of the place. Because the trees began to grow in stranger patterns, all leaning subtly toward a central ridge, and the wildlife, once noisy and curious, had gone silent. And Fletcher, normally fearless, started growling at the dark, backing into me with his tail between his legs, and I'll never forget the moment we stumbled across the first structure, a stone pillar maybe 5 feet tall, covered in moss and old symbols that didn't match any language I knew. But what chilled me more was that the ground around it was completely clear. No leaves, no twigs, like the forest was deliberately kept back. And as I stood there examining it, I noticed something worse, something subtle, that the forest around me had gone utterly still, not just silent, but frozen, as if holding its breath. And that's when I first felt the sensation that I would come to know far too well. Being watched, not in the way you feel a bear might watch you, or a hidden camera, but something older, something with intent, and I dismissed it. I had to, because admitting it meant fear, and fear meant vulnerability, and vulnerability in the wild gets you killed. So I pressed on. But that night I heard it, the sound of whispering just beyond the edge of camp, low, rhythmic, in a language I didn't recognize, and Fletcher sat staring into the trees, ears perked, body rigid, and wouldn't sleep a single second. And though I wanted to believe it was just the wind, some part of me knew it wasn't. Because wind doesn't chant, and by the fourth night the forest had changed entirely, the stars above were dimmer, and I started seeing things between the trees. Figures, tall and still, not moving, not speaking, just standing at the far edge of my vision, disappearing when I looked directly at them, and the path I'd marked with stones and ribbons seemed to twist and shift, leading me in loops, bringing me back to the same clearing no matter how many times I tried to walk away, and that's when the dreams began. If you can call them dreams, because they didn't feel like dreams. They felt like something else, like memories that weren't mine, visions of a vast black hollow, of bodies kneeling in circles around fires made of bone, of things that walked without faces, and every time I woke, I felt more exhausted than before, like sleep wasn't rest but extraction, like something was peeling me away, layer by layer, and by the fifth day, Fletcher stopped eating, refused to move. His eyes constantly locked on the tree line. And it was then I decided to climb the ridge, to see where it led, to try and find a way out because my compass no longer pointed north, my GPS had gone dead, and I had no other options, and the climb was brutal, hands blistered, legs shaking. But I pushed forward, and as I neared the summit, I noticed the forest thinning, not naturally, but like it had been cleared long ago. And there at the top was a structure, old, circular, made of stone, half collapsed, but unmistakably built, and in its center was a pit, deep and dark. And when I looked into it, I felt something shift in my mind, like a pressure pushing inward, a voice without sound whispering not into my ears, but into my thoughts. And in that moment, Fletcher started barking violently, fur bristling, and then he bolted into the trees, gone in seconds. And though I called for him until my throat was raw, he never came back. And I didn't follow, because I knew, somehow, that if I did, I wouldn't return either. So I stayed at the ridge until sunset, trying to think, trying to decide what to do. And that's when I saw the lights, small floating orbs moving between the trees below, dozens of them, flickering gently, like lanterns without source. And they began to rise, slowly, drifting toward the ridge. And though every instinct screamed to run, my body wouldn't move. And as they reached the clearing, I saw them. Figures, dozens of them, tall, impossibly tall, with limbs that bent the wrong way and heads that turned too far. And they stood there, watching, unmoving, like statues made of night. And I don't remember what happened next, only that I woke up at the bottom of the ridge, alone, no pack, no dog, just a deep cut across my palm and a symbol drawn in ash on my chest. And somehow, I walked out. I don't know how, but I made it to the ranger station 3 days later, half-starved, raving, and when they found me, they didn't ask questions, just gave me water and called a doctor, and later, a man came to see me, said he was with Forestry Services, but his badge looked fake, and he only asked me one question. Did it follow you back? And when I didn't answer, he left, and I never saw him again. And since then, I've tried to move on, to rebuild. But sometimes I still see the lights, outside my window, hovering just beyond the trees. And some nights I hear Fletcher barking, faintly in the distance. But I don't go looking, because deep down I know that ridge still remembers me, still watches me. And one day, when it's ready, it'll call me back.